Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast presented by Gameday Tailgate Experience. Elevate your tailgate when the Steelers travel to Jacksonville November 18th to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars in some Sunday night football action. But long before we get to that, there's a part of the process in the preseason that just took place. The Steelers cut down from 90-ish or so players, excluding a guy from the UK exchange program, and got that down to 53. And we're still in the process of figuring out waivers and practice squad to be announced and things of that nature. But we're going to get ahead. We're going to get ahead of that runaway train right now and give you some reflections based off of what were our predictions for the 53-man roster, as well as our thoughts on who the Steelers let go and who they kept. My name is Joe Kuzma, and I am the movie adaptation version of the lengthy novel that is Mr. Brian E. Roach. What's up, Brian?
This is the first time in years where your analogy feels completely accurate.
Because for those of you who are also readers over at SteelCityUnderground.com, when Brian writes something, it is lengthy, and he usually gets yelled at. Or what ends up happening, you don't see this because it's behind the scenes, Brian's articles will get split. Like when he was doing this season projection or season predictions, what was that, maybe 2-3 years ago, and you gave it all to me, and it was like 8,000 words. I'm like, why don't we just break this up into 4 weeks each and do 4 articles of it? And of course, that's smart from just a publishing standpoint. Then we have something for 4 times as much stuff. But for you, the reader, I mean, I can't imagine the people that are on mobile phones looking at the website. Their finger probably, they may have to get surgery on their finger from flicking through one of Brian's articles. So it's very, very accurate. But I know there's everyone's just begging. Everyone's just dying to hear my thoughts on the 53. So we might as well get it out of the way. The big one that no one anticipated here. I know everybody wants to hear my thoughts about. I can't believe the Steelers did this, but they let go of Keon Adams. And I feel really, really bad about that because, I mean, he's been an invited guest on the show multiple times, really good guy. I hope he sticks with the practice squad. I thought he had a good shot of maybe making it as we were predicting, but wait, that's not the one we were talking. That's not the one everyone's waiting for, is it, Brian?
Sure, of course it is. That's the biggest surprise.
It was the biggest
occurred yesterday.
That's the biggest battle. I mean, that's the one that everybody had their eyes on, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure, absolutely. There's nothing else to talk about. That's it. And thanks for listening, folks.
Yeah, that's it. Everyone, have a good night. Be sure to tip your waitress. So, or your server. I should be more correct in that because there are many waiters and waitresses. I think it is just server now. I mean, I don't know.
Server.
It's the same thing like cashier versus customer service rep. I hated that because then, you know what? Nobody wanted to say customer service rep. When I was working in college, you were a CSR. What's a CSR? A cursor. Like, it's just kind of dumb. But speaking of dumb, no, it really wasn't dumb. This wasn't a dumb move. I know everybody's waiting to hear my thoughts on Landry Jones. I am not the only person out there who is thoroughly surprised by this move. I think pretty much every beat writer, I could tell you, Ed Bouchette was on board with this. Want to say, who's the guy from Chase Williams, I think is his name, from WPXI. Mark Cabali from The Athletic. Everybody, no one, myself included, maybe even you, Brian, had a pretty good feeling that Landry Jones was kind of a lock to make the roster. And I have some thoughts on it, but I'm not bent out of shape. I'm going to say this. The NFL stands for the not for long league. Landry had, a 6-year career, or was about to be his 6th year? Because, he had a 4-year rookie contract, and then he signed. He got a second contract. That's a pretty darn good NFL career, and I still think he's going to land on his feet somewhere. And don't forget, the Steelers tried to get rid of Charlie Batch a few times, and that didn't end up working out because maybe somebody gets hurt, and Landry, maybe he doesn't end up Now, here's another thing. Let's put this out there real quick, too, before we talk about the quarterbacks. The difference between terminated and released, because I was asked this question yesterday. When a player is terminated, it means that they are a vested veteran. A vested veteran does not go on the practice squad, or I should say is not eligible to go on the practice squad. And a vested veteran doesn't go through the waiver system. They immediately become free agents. So the Missile, Nat Burhay, and Landry Jones as vested veterans were, quote, terminated. And you may have heard that term last year, and I think we brought this up back then with L.J. Fort. L.J. Fort was a vested veteran. He would not have been eligible to go on the practice squad this year. He actually made the team, which is another surprise we'll talk about. But Landry and Burhay are free agents. And to my knowledge, everyone else who is released actually goes through that whole waiver claim process. Now, you're not seeing a whole bunch of names from the free agents signing anywhere, because one thing is, usually when they're a veteran, I don't know, that ends up being tricky, ends up being maybe some dollar figure things and agents, but a lot of these teams, they're waiting. They may or may not make a waiver claim. They won't make many. If they do, the spots on the 53 are valuable, and then they're going to wait to see who clears waivers. They may have somebody that's in that process, and when that clears in the later this Sunday afternoon, then everybody gets added to the pool, and everybody's a free agent. So it's going to be a crazy few days, and we'll probably have more things to talk about with this in the next show.
Yeah. I have to say this because you brought it up, and it's just a necessity. They've been terminated. I just had to say it. It is. I think you covered that pretty well, actually. I don't really have much to contribute there because, I think there is a lot of confusion about what the difference is, but. It's just semantics. They could come back. I expect Nate Burhay to come back, quite frankly, one way or the other, because one of the biggest surprises to me was the fact that Marcus Allen made the 53.
Yes.
And considering the amount of playing time he got, considering where he played, that was much more surprising even than the Landry Jones thing to me. But it won't surprise me if the ultimate move is that Marcus Allen goes on IR and Nate Burhay comes back. So I don't, the cautionary tale is always this 53 may not be the 53 come next week in Cleveland, and almost certainly won't be. So we'll have to see how it really adjusts from there, as we move along, but to get back to Landry, somebody tagged me on Twitter asking me, because of course, look, I was solidly in forthright saying I did not believe Landry Jones was going to get cut. And the reasons I did not believe that is because Ben gave him the, dreaded vote of confidence.
Thanks, Ben.
Early on.
Yeah, I get along with Todd Haley too. Whoops.
Yeah, exactly. Told everybody he trusted Landry and everything else. But the thing is, the way I responded to it is if it's possible to be both not surprised and surprised at the same time, that's kind of how I feel. It's surprising in the sense that they are now going into a season where they have Super Bowl aspirations and their backup quarterbacks have never taken or thrown a ball in a regular season game. That's unusual. Let's just put it that way. But at the same time, look, if you watch Josh Dobbs play in the preseason at all, it's not a surprise. He made his case on the field. And we talked about it every single preseason game. He is vastly improved. It put us in a position where we're arguing back and forth as to whether or not he's going to be a fourth quarterback held onto. It just didn't seem likely that they would release the single veteran because that's not been their tendency. They've liked to have a veteran quarterback backing Ben up, and they don't have one now. So, it speaks to Josh Dobbs' abilities. It speaks to how well he may have learned the playbook. I mean, the guy's he's a freaking rocket scientist, so he's a very smart guy. So we shouldn't be surprised that he may have picked up the playbook faster than some other guys may have. We knew Mason Rudolph was going to be around. So we definitely, we got it wrong. There's no question about it. But I don't think that, either of us is truly surprised that we ended up wrong overall.
Well, I wouldn't even say it's wrong. I want to say that we didn't consider, and then I've been going back and forth with this with a few different people over on the site, on social media. The one thing was, and this was from Mark Cavalli, aforementioned of The Athletic, was saying a $1.5 million savings. They were like, well, he's pretty much on a veteran minimum, a little bit better than a veteran minimum, but Landry Jones, that is. So that's the cap savings that they'll get, and who knows where they may try and tuck that around somewhere. I don't know, or unspent money that they could roll over to the following year. I mean, this is a case of one situation where, yes, the guys behind them are cheaper. And we've talked about this with Le'Veon Bell on many past episodes about spending money on one position or whatever. But it's not like it's a huge savings, but it was just something extra to point out that I know we didn't consider that. Now, as far as, Ben does not have this. There's not a veteran quarterback now. There's not a guy that's taken a snap, not one rep, in a regular season NFL game. Now, Josh Dobbs looked fantastic, but again, you consider it a level of competition. Should he be able to replicate that? I would hope so. It certainly looks promising, and he did so well that we were considering, God, we got to keep all four of these guys because you got to have somebody that's at least experienced or done something. And then the other two guys have done nothing. And what if they stink when they face actual NFL starters in real-time games? But Dobbs was so good that we forgot how good Rudolph was this preseason too. I mean, he wasn't bad at all. He's putting up like 90s for his QB ratings. So Dobbs looked like a leader. And you got to hope one of the two. And I think the assumption right out the gate is that, and I think Dobbs has the edge as the backup just because he's been around an extra year. But I don't necessarily know that that's going to be the situation, be the case. Let's say the Steelers steamroller their entire schedule the same way that they did last season, and they enter the final week of the season against the Bengals, and nothing is on the line, and they're playing at Heinz Field, and they're like, 12-3 or whatever, similar situation. Are they going to play Mason Rudolph or are they going to play Josh Dobbs? I find that to be interesting. And which of these two guys now, after Ben was already saying Dobbs may have been a wasted draft pick, and he wasn't exactly thrilled at the prospect of them bringing in Mason Rudolph. So you got two guys now that are behind Ben, or Ben didn't feel threatened by Landry Jones anymore, and he would have felt threatened by Charlie Batch. Those two guys, and I compared those two guys, as we know. I had that over on the website, and everybody's like, huh? Well, Charlie was a hometown guy, but Charlie also threw 3 picks in more than one game, and everybody wants to hang their hat on Landry Jones, throwing a special teams gadget play interception in Seattle where, he threw all of like 3 or 4 passes in that game and come off the bench, or the same thing in Cincinnati where he came off the bench, but you had Charlie Batch, who was part of like a fiasco against the Cleveland Browns, and then I want to say another team, maybe he beat the Buccaneers, but there was some other team where he threw a bunch of picks, and he was 12 TDs to 12 interceptions, and in his career, he was just the backup, and that's why I brought him up before as a guy. They tried to bring in Byron Leftwich to go over him, and then Leftwich got hurt. They drafted Dennis Dixon. Dennis Dixon gets hurt, and you're always going back, and then they brought Leftwich back again, and he gets hurt again, and they had to keep going back to Charlie Batch. So if Landry's there, I feel he's a good option, but what you're missing now is that you have to expect Mason Rudolph or Josh Dobbs or a combination of both of them to run the scout team to be able to pick up what opposing NFL defenses, the looks they're going to throw. Jones has been around for a long time and has been doing that. He knows the system that the Steelers run. Probably he should know it inside and out as a veteran. I'm not saying by any means Josh Dobbs is a legitimate rocket scientist. I don't think he won't be able to pick some of this up on paper and give some advice. But as the guy who's been around for, what year is this for Ben now? Like 14, 15?
14 or 15, yeah.
Yeah. He came in the league in 2004. He's going to be taking advice from guys who have a cumulative one NFL season between both of them, trying to tell him what they saw. And this looks a lot different in the NFL than college. That's really my only concern. And you said it too, Super Bowl aspirations. So I know if Ben gets hurt, and a lot of people want to bring this up and say, well, if Ben gets hurt, season's in the toilet anyways. Well, it depends. Are we talking 2, 3, 4 games that Ben's out? Or somebody like a Landry Jones, or even when Michael Vick was here, or Bruce Gradkowski, or other guys that had veteran experience? Charlie Batch included in those names. Can they win half of those games and keep you in the postseason race versus another guy who may just totally, they might both be bad, or we may be pleasantly surprised and have a glimpse of the future. It's hard to know, and that's where the risk is, and that's where my angle always was. I was afraid of just letting Dobbs go because I'm not necessarily sure that Rudolph is the guy. We don't know that yet. He could be nobody. Dobbs could be the guy, or he could be nobody, and Rudolph be the guy, or both of them could be nobodies, or both of them could be somebodies. We've hammered the backup quarterback, the first-round quarterback, the drafting a quarterback thing so much over the last few years since Ben uttered something that began with an R and rhymed with retirement, and it's just, we don't know, and there's risk there involved, and the risk that they took now was, we're going to go with these young guys, and I think anyway, if Ben gets hurt and misses half or more of the season and is done completely like an Aaron Rodgers situation, the Super Bowl stuff is kind of in the dumps anyways, trying to chase that. But you can't just say, well, if Ben gets hurt a couple games, they're screwed anyways, because the Philadelphia Eagles did not think that way, and look what happened with them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like if Ben does go down, knock on wood that doesn't happen. Yeah, I need a tree trunk to knock on. We've said this before. You might trust Landry to win 2 or 3 games in a span against, average, maybe even slightly above average teams. Probably not the best teams that are in the league. Can Josh Dobbs do that? We don't know.
Maybe.
We know Landry, maybe. We don't know yes or no yet, but it certainly looks promising based on the growth that he's had and the way he looked this preseason. We always have to caution everybody. Preseason isn't the regular season. It's going to look different. People aren't throwing everything out there in the preseason. Defenses aren't playing every nuance of what they're going to do during the regular season. They do keep some of that in reserve, but he did the right things from a mechanics standpoint. He looked infinitely better from the concept of not, other than the one pass in Green Bay, not constantly staring down receivers, not going through his progressions. He did those things, for the most part. So that's all good news and would lead you to believe that maybe he can come in and win a couple games. But if Ben's out for an extended period, forget it. We're looking towards the next season. I don't think we're in a position where we have a legitimate former starting quarterback or, potential starting quarterback, but we could be wrong. One of the big differences here is Fitchner versus Haley. It's Haley who probably made the determinant part of that whole conversation about we're always going to keep a veteran backup. Could have been part of his gig. Maybe Randy Fitchner went, yeah, I don't care. I like these guys. Let's keep them.
I could totally. He looks like such a laid back guy. I hate to read a book by its cover, but it just seems like, I don't know. It's funny. It kind of, I don't know if you've watched the Hard Knocks with the Browns, but they got an offensive line coach, Bob Wiley, that he cracks me up, and he's so relatable with players. Unlike Hugh Jackson, by the way, who's just an oaf. And then you see how grating Todd Haley is, but he's pretty much like he's the disciplinarian that team really needs to get out of their funk because they don't even hustle through drills in their practices and training camp, which is quite sad and pathetic. Speaking of sad and pathetic, let's talk about the Raiders for 1 second. We're going to jump off the quarterbacks and talk about Chucky Gruden over there. Just totally, folks, we said this kind of tongue-in-cheek when we were talking about the Martavis Bryant trade, and the sad part of this, the sad portion of this, sad and pathetic, is Martavis Bryant, his demons. Hopefully he gets everything cleaned up, but he didn't even make the Raiders team. And they traded a 3rd-round pick to the Pittsburgh Steelers, in which we got Mason Rudolph for that. So that's number 1. Now let's go to the pathetic portion of it. He just traded a 5th-round draft pick for A.J. McCarron, who I'm not even sure what to make of that. Like, A.J. McCarron, like, people, I think the Bengals got that right, letting them go. And you talk about bad backup quarterbacks and whatever. But a 5th-round pick, maybe a little high. I don't know. Wasn't that exactly where he came into the league? There's a writer for Bleacher Reports, Mike Tanier, here that just tweeted out, wait, a fifth for A.J. McCarron? I wouldn't trade a fifth of Jim Beam for A.J. McCarron. and we were talking about a bag of peanuts or some Tootsie Pops or something if Chucky was interested in maybe Josh Dobbs or even Landry Jones. And it looks like that may have been on the table. You never know. But then there was Khalil Mack. And, I mean, it deserves mention even though it's not part of our roster thing. What on earth? You mean to tell me you could not get something done with this guy? Pay the man. This isn't like a Le'Veon Bell type replacement type deal here where a guy's sitting on the franchise tag and everything else. He is the premier guy on the defense, and defensive players get paid more money if you've paid attention to that. And I'm just completely mind blown that now the Raiders got something out of it. What was it, like 2 first-round picks or whatever? It was like a whole bunch of conditional, all kinds of stuff. I don't have it all in front of me, but my mind was blown that move was made.
Yeah, look, I don't have any faith that the Raiders are going to do any better with first-round picks than they may have done at various times in the past. Remember, as much as we love DHB, I'm sorry, not a first-round guy, especially where the Raiders took him. I know that was pre-Gruden era stuff, but still, I don't have faith in that. And again, Rod Woodson, you're one of your favorites of all time, tweeted out yesterday. Let's try and find the number of teams who have traded arguably one of the top 2 defensive players or players at their position in the league and gone on to win anything. I'll wait. You don't win by trading away the best talent in the league. And while not being a Raiders fan, not being even remotely sympathetic to their plight, there is a tiny part of me that feels bad for the Raiders. I'm not calling them a nation because there's only one nation.
And you're looking at it, pal.
That's right. The Raiders group. Because Chucky is essentially, I feel like he came back, said, give me all your money, and I'm going to break your toys because you let me go and I hate you.
I mean, I'm just looking at some of these. Oh, man. I mean, some of the picks that they've had over the years, first-round picks, you go back all the way to, oh, my goodness. It gets worse as I go deeper into this.
Jamarcus Russell.
That was 2007. Darren McFadden, 08. Darius Hayward-Bay, 2009, followed by Mike Mitchell, who of the Steelers, formerly of the Steelers as well. Rolando McClain. And I mean, they got some guys that are decent players in mid-rounds, but just to stick on the first round or their first pick overall, because then they had a round 2 with Stefan Wisniewski. They didn't even have a first-round pick. They didn't have the first 2 rounds in 2012. Tony Bergstrom, who was a tackle. DJ Hayden. Khalil Mack is gone now. That year they had Derek Carr in the second round. Amari Cooper and then Mario Edwards, who they also just canned, was a second-round pick. And then Clive Wofford, third-round pick, also out of town there now. Then you go and look, Carl Joseph hurt. Gary and Conley, there was chatter about Obi Melanofu being either dealt or released. That I don't think that officially happened, though, but there was chatter that they were not getting along either. It's like, what is going on with the Raiders? But what's going on with the Steelers? We digressed just because there could be far greater insane things going on with teams than trying to figure out if you're going to have a future at backup quarterback, and hopefully your number one guy, Ben, stays healthy. And I've said over the last few years, I really hate the national TV programs that just kind of glean over the whole story. And they say Ben's injury prone. Cheap shots. As long as he doesn't get cheap shotted, the guy is he should be golden. So guys holding out. Let's jump to the running backs. Bob Labriola tends to think that they're going to keep an extra running back when Le'Veon Bell signs his papers. I just don't know where they trim from in order to do that. We'll look at some other spots at the roster where they have extra positions. But Stephen Ridley makes it. We said flip a coin with him and Fitz Toussaint. I think Ridley's a kind of a different change of pace type guy. May have better hands too. So it's Connor, Roosevelt Nix, Jalen Samuels. No surprise with Samuels there. But, there's no way I think he was going anywhere. And Stephen Ridley. I don't know if we have a whole lot to discuss there. I think we nailed most of it on the prediction show.
Yeah, I was one off on offensive line. I think I had them keeping 8, and Zach Banner is that difference guy.
Yeah, me too.
And that's a guy. He's on the roster right now, but if that's a guy who could go onto the practice squad if they need to make room for Le'Veon Bell and want to keep essentially four running backs plus Roosevelt Nix. So that's a potential guy there. We did talk about Zach Banner because, he's ginormous, and Mike Tomlin likes ginormous guys. There wasn't a surprise that he was there, but, I felt like they were going to use that someplace else. I think the biggest question on the offensive side, even though I think we kind of came close to nailing the tight ends, you may have nailed it completely. I thought maybe Xavier might not make it, but are those guys going to all be ready? Is Vance going to be ready for game 1? What's going to happen there? And does Bucky Hodges still have a shot at showing up around here someplace?
Yeah, that's the one where it was different for sure. With I hit Xavier Grimble. I just thought he was going to make it as a vet. I also thought his surgery on his finger or whatever was very minor, and that he would recuperate and be ready. So I think at least Jesse James and Xavier Grimble healthy week 1. Vance McDonald is a mystery. I almost wanted to say freaking mystery because we have no clue what's going on there. The offensive line, of course, we mentioned Zach Banner as kind of a bubble guy. So I was. It's another thing like with the quarterbacks. I was surprised and not surprised. So,
right.
I'm totally good. I'm totally good with it, as I am even with the Landry Jones move. Look, I defended him for so many years. I still like the guy. I love my Steelers. I love all of these guys. I became enamored with the Mason Rudolph pick and the Josh Dobbs play this preseason. I can't be upset about any of it. I'm thrilled. I think they're loaded. Like they're deep at practically every position, provided they're healthy. Now, offensive line, all of your normal starters, several Pro Bowl guys here. You have Ramon Foster should be coming back from injury. But David DeCastro, Marcus Gilbert, Alejandro Villanueva, Marquise Pouncey. Then your backups, Matt Filer, B.J. Finney, Chuck Okorafor, who was the 4th-round pick. Jeez, or was he – hold on a second. Or was he the 3B or something? They didn't have a 4th-round pick, right?
Right, third.
3B.
Yeah.
3B. 3A was Mason Rudolph. That's right, 2 third-rounders. So, blah, blah, blah. So, not a big, huge surprise there. The wide receivers, we were not blindsided by this either. Antonio Brown, obviously. Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, the 2nd-round pick this year. And then you're going to round out the roster with the guy they just traded for, who's more a specialist than anything, Ryan Switzer, DHB, Darius Hayward-Bay, also sort of kind of specialist, a big special teams guy and a veteran. And then Justin Hunter, I thought, did just enough. Between DHB and Justin Hunter, that's another spot they may trim depending on how things progress through the season and depending on what other injuries and positions that they need to kind of round out should, unplanned things happen.
Yeah. It wasn't – I mean, there just weren't that many open positions on the offensive side of the ball. So it kind of, other than Landry being let go, that kind of just fell in the way we assumed it would.
Yep, exactly. And before jumping to the defense, as seems to be almost the protocol all of the time now, is I got to get you that promo code for the GTE Jacksonville tailgate party down in Jacksonville, Florida on November 18th. That's the big game. That's the one that we're putting kind of on the spotlight, maybe even before the Patriots. You got the Ravens, you got some other things going on. Steelers have a lot of rematches on this schedule this year. You open with the Chiefs. That's been a thorn in the side for a while. They get the Patriots at home again. But this one, they got to travel down to Jacksonville. And if you're looking to hang out, make a little vacation, go to warmer weather, You may be able to jump in the pool. I know everybody that's up north will think it's warm enough to do so. You'll probably see that people down in Jacksonville wearing turtlenecks and the heavy Under Armour and winter coats and stuff if it's like 65 degrees, 70 degrees. But I will have my shorts on. I'll be enjoying the big 5-hour tailgate with the all-you-can-eat and the open bar, all the celebrities. There's a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model. I'm still waiting to say who the Steeler is because I got to confirm it. I know who the name is, but I can't say it yet. So I will be mentioning that in a future episode. But if you're interested in that, there's also giveaways and there's going to be other stuff going on there. It's just, this thing is wild. So listeners, if you're going or you thinking about going and you don't want to have to worry about, 16-hour drive down to Jacksonville or whatever, maybe not 16, it might be more closer to 14, whatever it is, wherever you're coming from, and you don't want to lug around a grill or you're flying down there, just relax and let them take care of everything for you. You could get a ticket. They're not very expensive. There's also the non-alcoholic option, which is almost like half the price of the food and alcohol option. So if you're not a drinker, that's cool too. There's all kind of stuff. It's a family-friendly atmosphere. Find out more at steelcityunderground.com/Jaguars tailgate. And if you want to save 20% off of that event ticket, use the promo code SteelCity during checkout. So now the defense, and I kind of just. The Keon Adams thing did surprise me, jumping to the linebackers first. We mentioned Chick could have been on the low end. I don't know that his job's still safe, even through like the weekend and the early part of the week, as there's a lot of roster transactions. But I was very, 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 very happy. And I love that Bob Labriola put in his article. He didn't even spell out Ola's name. He just put Ola Adani. He didn't even put Ola Sunkami as his full name. But I thought that was pretty cool. So now we're vindicated by not having to say the full thing and nail it right every time. But a few of the non-surprises like Bud Dupree, your starters, T.J. Watt, Vince Williams, John Bostic, who should be slated in at least now in that role. But the inside linebackers, they kept I had 8, you had 10, I think, but they only kept 9. Keon Adams was the one that we both thought was going to be there. He's not. Instead, they keep LJ Fort. They have Tyler Matakevich, and then the upstart, I want to say, undrafted free agent, Matthew Thomas.
Yeah, Matthew Thomas was not going to get through waivers. There's just no doubt in my mind. I think other teams have needs inside. Other teams have injuries inside. And he showed more than enough in the preseason that if the Steelers had tried to sneak him onto the practice squad, it wasn't going to happen. And I think they were aware of that. Now, that all being said, he probably still earned his position. It's not that he was being gifted this or something like that. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying that. He earned a shot at the 53. He's got risks. He's raw still. He needs to get better at processing what's in front of him quicker. But, speed makes up for a lot of mental errors, and he's got speed galore. So I was very encouraged. I mean, we've been meeting the Matthew Thomas drum since maybe even before the draft.
Yeah. It was definitely – it was on the radar. It was a guy they visited with for sure.
Yeah. And – once he became a part of Steelers Nation, there was no question in our mind that this is a guy who has the potential to be a diamond in the rough, a true, need I say his name, who shall not be named part 2, as you say, story as an undrafted free agent. I was surprised about Keon Adams. I'm still surprised about Keon Adams. I assume he will end up on the practice squad. I guess the problem here is he just didn't show enough in pass rush to make his case. He was great in run support, in the preseason, but he didn't really splash in pass rush, and I maybe he doesn't provide the same kind of benefit on special teams that LJ Fort does. That move surprises me more than anything else they did, except maybe the Marcus Allen thing. But primarily because, as we've said repeatedly, they know what they have with LJ Fort, and because they knew what they had with LJ Fort, they signed Sean Spence. So, Did LJ Fort really improve? Maybe he did. Maybe they see more than we saw in these 4 preseason games and in practices to make them think he's better than he was at the end of last year when they felt like their only real solution was to start Sean Spence. So we'll see how it pays out. The rest of them, Bostic, Williams, as you said, Matthew Tom, Matakevich, we're all kind of no-brainers. I don't think either one of us really thought Chicolo wasn't going to make it. But as you said, I'm not 100% certain that his position remains safe. And this is an area where, again, I think that we could see change depending on how things pan out with who gets down to. I mean, there's a lot of players out there, and I don't want to even speculate on any of them because the Steelers are so far down on the waiver wire list that you just don't know who could fall to them. But depending on who gets through waivers and finds their way to the Steelers, we may see somebody claimed that fits into this linebacker role.
Yes, and I agree. I have nothing against LJ Fort. I was kind of hoping he would have played over like Sean Spence. You know what? I'm going to put it this way. If Fort would have played in that Jacksonville playoff game, I don't think it would have been any worse. It could have been better, but it wouldn't have been any worse as far as any of the coverage or liability on the defensive side of things. Now, here's one of the things that you got to keep in mind too, and we're going to mention this with the safeties and like Marcus Allen making a roster, but a few of these guys, if they're dinged up, even Xavier Grimble for this matter, in order to be designated return from IR, meaning you're going to have to sit out about, 9 weeks before you could come back and be designated for return at the earliest at the start of the season. Think Bud Dupree and Ladarius Green was the pup list thing. That was a little different. But this happened with Bud Dupree a couple years ago. And now they're permitted, I think, 2 rather than just 1 to bring back from injured reserve during the season. I think before, way back, you couldn't even bring anybody back. Like the IR thing was final. You couldn't bring anybody back from injured reserve. Now there's terms and conditions where, you just can't stash somebody on injured reserve. There's consequences to putting them there, and then you have to wait to bring them back. And if it's somebody that gets hurt, and you're kind of you're going to want to try and reserve a roster space. It depends on the timetable, but if they're already going to be out for several months, I remember this was the thing with was it Pouncey that he was hurt and he didn't know what was going on. He never ended up coming back, but a lot of people thought he was going to be back in November, and they didn't end up bringing other guys back because they only had 1 that they could do. But in order to do any of that, you have to be on the final 53 roster. If you would have put a Marcus Allen on injured reserve as part of the roster moves and cuts and not part of the final 53, he would not be able to return for all of 2018 as one of those 2 designated players. So there's a lot of, that's the same thing as terminated and released. There's a lot of legalese to this when it comes to how the rosters are structured and rules for who goes where, when, and why. And I do have to, there were some moves at the end of, the preseason last year too. I have Joe Rutter from the Pittsburgh, the Tribune down in Pittsburgh, and he said something about making the moves last year. They added J.J. Wilcox, not after cuts. J.J. Wilcox was a trade, but he says after cuts. But Steven Johnson, if you remember him, and he kind of made the team and then was cut and things like that. So there's still going to be some flexibility that's going to happen, and this is one of the spots with the linebackers where it definitely could happen because I don't know, either that or they're trying to hedge their bets with basically 4 guys trying to replace Ryan Shazier, which is that's essentially what John Bostic, Tyler Matakevich, Matthew Thomas, and LJ Fort are doing. Aside from backing up Vince Williams, they're there to find somebody who's going to stick, and hopefully they threw that dart and hit somewhere on the board. We won't know that until December. Hopefully it doesn't take that long to figure it out, but defensive line, I don't think we were too surprised at any of this either. Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, Javon Hargrave, Tyson Alou, Latarius, L.T. Walton, and then Big Dan McCullers, who we kind of pegged as having the edge over our Josh Frazier. Quite honestly, if they would have cut Josh Dobbs and kept Dan McCullers, I may have gone down and tried to take an axe and start chipping away at things down at Heinz Field myself. I would have been leading part of the charge. There's the same thing with like an LJ Ford or somebody like that. I no ill will towards any of those guys. I'm just looking down the road at potential, and I see a ceiling with some of these other players with the defensive line. And I know we pretty much are in agreement on that, but I don't know if there's something else you want to add.
No, I think Dan McCullers, like I said, he showed enough that he did what he needed to do to earn his spot, being the vet on the team. And Josh Frazier simply didn't show enough and probably didn't have enough opportunity to show. It's the rest of that group was pretty much assumed. I think we ended up where we were going to end up. And what I feel like I got to stress, and we can continue probably need to stress, is that what we have in front of us right now is really good roster, but it's probably still not the 53-man roster that we're going to have going into Cleveland.
Yeah, no, and there's not going to be a whole lot of like moves in the first week. I don't think, like maybe 2 tops. Plus or minus 2. I sound like a bookie now. My bookie. Anyway, let's go to defensive backs. We had 10, but this kind of panned out a little differently with 5 corners and 5 safeties. I thought it was going to be 6 corners. I don't know that I'm necessarily thrilled that they got rid of Brian Allen. I think they could probably get him on the practice squad if he ends up clearing the waivers. But, of course, Morgan Burnett. Oh, I should start with the corners. Let's just do Joe Hayden, Artie Burns, Mike Hilton, Cam Sutton, Cody Sensabaugh. We said Sensabaugh, I mean, as a cornerback, as probably the 5th guy off the bench, you're not going to do any better than Cody Sensabaugh. Trust me, folks. So there's no ill will there. Maybe you don't want him as your corner 1 or 2 maybe, but in a pinch, special teams, yeah, he's cool. Not a problem. He's hot and cold at times. But I thought Brian Allen was maybe a better special teams player and maybe had some upside, but maybe they feel that they could see what they could get from him on the practice squad this year. And then again, when they're terminating some of these like rookie contracts too, this happened with Anthony Chickillo. Maybe it might be some type of future reserve type contract. They see how they can like structure this and bring a guy back like on a 1-year deal, like at the end of the season, bring him back the following year. Then he's like, some type of either restricted free agent, exclusive rights free agent, things of that nature. So there's still more legalese to that too. And it works a little differently when you were already drafted versus an undrafted free agent. On the safety side, let me see. I said Mo Burnett, Sean Davis. Who else am I looking at here? Terrell Edmonds, Marcus Allen, and Jordan Dangerfield. And the last 2 names there between Allen and Dangerfield, I did the look where the owl turns his head to the side and his eyes like bug out. And I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, Dangerfield wasn't on the roster last year. He was hurt. But I can't say – we even talked about Burhay for that matter. These guys, basically Robert Golden – like I still have nightmares of safety coverage with like Jordan Dangerfield with the AFC Championship game. Like I'm not incredibly comfortable with the back end of that. I think you and I think Marcus Allen may end up on IR, and then they bring Burhay back. I don't think they're going to cut Dangerfield. Dangerfield, I think, was still practice squad eligible from everything that I researched. But I think we already know what's going on with some of these guys. And, the front end of this is fantastic, I think, much improved from last season. But God forbid if something happens, it may be tough sledding again. Yeah,
I just can't. I feel like Jordan Dangerfield has taken the Robert Golden slot. He's this guy that they keep wanting to be better, and he just keeps not being it. And it's not even the Dangerfield no respect joke anymore. He hasn't shown enough. We were both underimpressed with Nate Burhay anyway. So it's not a huge leap to say, okay, well, we know Jordan Dangerfield a lot better than we know Nate Burhay right now. We're going to keep him on the 53, try and restructure something with Burhay that fits more what he's shown us in camp and in the preseason to bring him back. But I thought Brian Allen played well enough in limited time to maintain his 53-man roster spot. But we got a new defensive backs coach. Is a good chance that he feels he can work better with Allen in the practice squad type of situation. Maybe, I don't know. Or he sees more in the other guys and feels more comfortable with having the veteran Cody Sensabaugh there. I had them keeping 10 guys. They kept 9. So, the odd man out really is Brian Allen for me, but I think I had them having Nate Burhay on here too. Versus, I guess they kept 9, right? Or did they keep 10? I can't count.
There's 10 defensive backs total, 5 and 5. And just so everyone's clear, Burhay had actually retweeted something about rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated or something to that cliche. Yeah. Meaning, he kind of, they probably have like a wink, wink, nod, nod deal going on here where he's, probably going to sign the same contract and come bounce right back as soon as they might tuck somebody away that they plan on bringing back later on. Not to mention, too, Marcus Allen may also factor into this like hybrid safety type thing, the dime backer, money backer, dollars, quarters, dimes, Sacagawea dollars, Liberty coins, everything else that they've got going on with this defense this year, the pocket change that it is. So, we'll see what goes on with this. This is going to be interesting, I'm sure, by the time some of you even listen to this heading into the Labor Day holiday here, there's going to be some massive changes. We'll have more of that to talk about coming up this week, maybe another surprise episode in the middle of the week before we end up previewing the season opener at the Cleveland Browns. Should be interesting since we saw a lot of stuff with Cleveland, with Hard Knocks. We don't know what's going on with Josh Gordon and guys like that. They had to make some roster moves too. There's a few players that are floating around. I know there's some buzz around a few names. I don't know if you want to mention any, Brian. I know me and Eric have liked Nate Orchard, who was kind of a defensive end, but kind of a smaller defensive end maybe that could also might be able to play outside linebacker in a 3-4. He was with the Cleveland Browns. He's been cut. And then there was Clive Wofford, a tight end. Speaking of tight end woes and injuries, he's a guy that's kind of more like a Matt Spaeth type, but he can actually catch the ball in a pinch too. He's not, I don't know that he has as much upside as Xavier Grimble in that respect, but if Xavier Grimble's hurt and he goes to injured reserve or something, this could be one of the moves they make rather than moving Hodges over. Those are the two that stood out. Of course, there's going to be a lottery for John Simon, who was just cut, the linebacker cut from the Indianapolis Colts. I would love to put a flyer on him, but I don't think they've got the money to do it.
I don't think they have the money to do it either. But who knows? Maybe that's part of why Landry Jones was cut. I just don't look. The key element there's 2 key elements with Nate Orchard for me. He might be able to be a 3-4 outside linebacker.
Yeah.
And he played for the Browns and got cut. So,
and what have they done that's ever been smart, except for maybe the Corey Coleman thing? But they've gotten rid of. Look at Bill Belichick, raids their roster all the time, though. You notice that?
Yeah, he does.
He picks these guys off, and with the exception of Kenny Britt, but he wasn't originally a Brown, anyways. But these guys, even the quarterbacks, they're still hanging around the league all over the place. How many of them are backups? There's Colt McCoy, there's Deshaun Kaiser, there's Cody Kessler, Brandon Whedon's still hanging around. It's they just. There's no patience in that program, and I thought John Dorsey was going to change that, but I think until Hugh Jackson gets booted out of town, it's not going to happen there. They have, I think they have excellent assistants. I think they have a good coaching staff aside from the guy that's running the ship there, and that happens far too often. I think they screwed it up when they had Norv Turner there as an OC. They had Kyle Shanahan there as an OC. It's you do a double take and what are these guys thinking? So we'll be telling you about that in an upcoming show.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know about Nate Orchard. I don't hate him. Believe me, I don't hate him, but I don't know. And again, he's got to be there when the Steelers have a shot at him. So
correct.
We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah,
it's all speculation.
It's all speculation. We could be totally full of it, but I'm going to end the show by saying Godspeed, Landry Jones. Thank you for everything you've done for Pittsburgh. Most of our fan base still loves you because they're not disrespectful jerks. And for the ones who said, wait a minute, you put words in my mouth. Well, too bad. You're going to live with it. Forever the GOAT. And I'm lucky I got my jersey signed when I did, because I still had that gut feeling that could be my final opportunity. So thank you, Landry. Now I'm going to have to move on to seeing if it's going to be Josh Goat or Mason Goat-off.
Okay.
Or Rue Goat.
Yeah, I'm not touching that.
Okay, that's fine. You don't have to. We are digressing. Aside from, I got one bonus question for you, Brian. It has nothing to do with the 53 or practice squad, but so with toast, my wife always makes fun of me because sometimes I make it and she almost says it's like raw, and it's not really toasted. It's more like bread with butter. But I went and I wasn't paying attention to the settings she had on the toaster, which put it into nuclear and stunk up the whole house this morning. How do you feel about like lightly toasted toast?
So are you talking about it's hard or it's just warm bread?
Warm bread. I mean, I'm good with warm bread. A little crummy, but maybe not like, like just a little brown on the edges and a little like golden in the middle, because that's like perfect toast for me.
Warm bread, which in my mind is you could have the crust, the actual real crust of the bread is still somewhat firm, but not hard. But the rest of the bread is just soft and warm, and it has no brownness or anything else. Once you get beyond warm bread, it's burnt.
You know what? Forget about it. Why did I even ask? So, and that's where we're at with all of this. The craziness has caught up to us. The usual lack of sleep has caught up to us. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure. Look forward to whatever we got coming up. And, hey, guess what? This year, there really aren't that many more Sundays without Steeler football, and there's the next one, we'll have it.
Woohoo! Cannot wait. So, folks, with that in mind, my name's Joe. His name's Brian. We'll have our helmet-worthy winners coming up within the next few shows as well. So, got to get those last ones. Well, it's already September, but you know what? We may let a few more trickle in. So, if you got them, send them. My name's Joe. His name's Brian. Till next time, have a happy Labor Day weekend, or what's left of it. Be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.